Hi, thank you for watching Digging to China. I'm Dong Sean. On Tuesday, February 2nd, House Republicans on the Committee on Homeland Security sent a letter to urge the White House to provide definitive clarity on its strategy to counter the threat from the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, as they warn of an aggressive attempt by China to erode American dominance. This letter was addressed to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. It reads, I quote, "We remain extraordinarily concerned about CCP's blatant efforts to weaponize their private sector for intelligence and military purposes, exploit the data of American people and business, and manipulate the global markets for critical and emerging technologies, all while being less than forthcoming on the international stage," unquote. The letter, written by all Republicans on the House committee, acknowledges that some Biden nominees and appointees have addressed China, but the lawmakers, quote, remain troubled that you have not yet provided a definitive clarity on how the administration plans on continuing the productive measures from the last 4 years to protect our homeland from this far-reaching CCP threat, unquote. The Trump administration took a combative stance toward China in terms of trade tariffs, electronic privacy, and on human rights violations in Hong Kong and against minorities in Xinjiang province. The Biden administration has recognized China as a threat, but is expected to take a less aggressive approach than the prior administration. China's foreign minister has said he believes Biden represents a new window of hope for the country's relationship with the United States. The Biden administration will, quote, return to a sensible approach, resume dialogue with China, restore normalcy to the bilateral relations, and restart cooperation, unquote. However, Secretary of State Antony Blinken told senators at his confirmation hearing that President Donald Trump was right in taking a tougher approach to Beijing. Meanwhile, UN nominee Linda Thomas-Greenfield told lawmakers that she would counter China's authoritarian agenda at the UN. But the House Republicans pointed to Commerce nominee Gina Raimondo, who did not say if Chinese tech giant Huawei will remain on the department's entities list. The House Republicans tell Sullivan they are hoping for a productive partnership with him and the administration on the whole, and they request a briefing on the plan to counter Chinese aggression. An anonymous author, self-described as a former senior government official with deep China expertise and experience, published an extraordinary Atlantic Council strategy paper last week. Its aim is nothing less than to shape Biden administration's strategy toward Beijing, with President Xi Jinping as its prime focus. The paper calls the Biden administration to draw red lines that, should deterrence fail, will prompt direct U.S. intervention. The United States' lists of red lines should be short, focused, and enforceable. The paper argues that those red lines should include 1. Any nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons action by China against the United States or its allies, or by North Korea where China has failed to take decisive action to prevent any such North Korean action. 2. Any Chinese military attack against Taiwan or its offshore islands, including an economic blockade or major cyber attack against Taiwanese public infrastructure and institutions. 3. Any Chinese attack against Japanese forces in their defense of Japanese sovereignty over the Senkaku Islands and their surrounding exclusive economic zone in the East China Sea. 4. any major Chinese hostile action in the South China Sea to further reclaim and militarize islands, to deploy force against other claimant states, or to prevent full freedom of navigation operations by the United States and allied maritime forces. 5. Any Chinese attack against the sovereign territory or military assets of U.S. treaty allies. The call for red lines is already stirring debate among China experts across the world. Some are in favor of these red lines because setting limits more clearly would reduce Chinese aggression. Others are against it because setting such red lines is an invitation either to U.S. humiliation should they fail to be enforced, or lead to unwanted conflict if enforced. However, what has stirred even greater debate is the paper's singular focus on China's leader and his behavior, who since his rise to power in 2013 has made the country more assertive externally and more repressive internally. Most recently stepping up restrictions on private businesses and strengthening the role of state enterprises. The single most important challenge facing the United States in the 21st century is the rise of an increasingly authoritarian China under President and General Secretary Xi Jinping. The anonymous author writes, U.S. policy strategy must remain laser-focused on Xi, his inner circle, and the Chinese political context in which they rule. Changing their decision-making will require understanding, operating within, and changing their political and strategic paradigm. All U.S. policy aimed at altering China's behavior should revolve around this fact, or it is likely to prove ineffectual. The author argues that any U.S. strategy would need to be based on the 4 fundamental pillars of American power: the power of its military, the dollar's role as the global reserve currency and the mainstay of the international financial system, continued global technological leadership, and the values of individual freedom, fairness, and the rule of law. I have included a link of the paper in the description of today's program. You can read it if you have time and interest. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment and subscribe to my channel. Just click the subscribe button right here. I'll see you again shortly.